Jon, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Michelle. Happy to be here.
You and I chatted before this, and I had said to you, I previously, there's two podcasts right now that most of our industry listens to in the gift industry, and it's luckily myself, and then another one called Rooted in Retail. And Crystal had just backed down and decided to step away from her podcast. So I had purposely kind of stayed in my own lane by keeping my talks with retailers and all about their journey. I kind of had done in the past, like a little bit of conversations with people that I felt were great tools for retailers' toolboxes. And I
Right.
kind of backed off from it. Now with Rooted in Retail not being with us anymore, I'm like, okay, I'm going to dip back in it. And you happen to pop up at the same time I was making this decision. So this worked out really well. And I have to say, I think people are going to be blown away by your background and the fact that you've written this book. So let's get to it, introduce yourself, and kind of give everyone a little bit of background on yourself.
Yeah, sounds wonderful. Thank you so much for the great setup. My name is Jon Dario. I am a longtime retailer. I graduated from Penn State University with a marketing degree and went straight into the world of retail with a job with Macy's. I went through Macy's executive training program and spent a few years in store line and buying line with Macy's. Then, after leaving Macy's, I worked for a couple of different retailers. I spent a few years with a regional sporting goods company called Herman's Sporting Goods in the Northeast, and did a couple of other small stints. Also spent a couple of years with a wholesaler in the juniors collections world, a company called MEX, MEXX, and finally landed with Gap. I spent nearly 10 years with Gap. I started running their flagship store in Manhattan. I ended up working as a district manager for the outlet division down in the Southeast, covering a few states in the Southeast. And then eventually went out to California to the headquarters team and ran operations for the outlet division and then ended up doing a stint with the Old Navy division. So had a lot of different experiences with Gap. From there, I went into financial services retail, spent time with Bank of America, and then I ended up running the North American operations for Travelex, which at the time was the world's leader in foreign currency retail, and had almost 300 locations across North America. And since then, I've landed as the CEO of a real estate company in New York, and we have had a number of different retail businesses that I've run as part of that retail company. Along the way, I've been an adjunct professor for retail marketing at Seton Hall University. I've written a few books. I've done some retail consulting and managed to get in a little bit of pickleball and tennis along the way as well.
Oh my God, your resume reads like it's crazy.
I've
I
been very lucky.
have most of the roles that you've been in, have they most have been management or working with management?
I have, yes, I've been in management or leadership positions all along the way. I mean, straight out of college, I came into a management job, and I haven't stopped managing people or in some sort of retail environment for almost 4 years.
One note I have to say is that you had time in wholesale industry, which I have as well. And I will say, I think that that's if you have a chance to work, if you're younger and you're listening to this and you have a chance to work in both sides of the aisle, it's very important. It's so great to be able to understand production and how it works and then utilize it within your day-to-day within retail, because they really do kind of go hand in hand in understanding some of how products roll off the line. But I just wanted to note that because I worked for wholesale for quite a bit of time, and it's not really in wholesale, but I still do display and merchandising on the wholesale end, and I still do merchandising on the retail end, and the same thing. That I think for me, doing both, my understanding of what retailers are looking for and being able to kind of utilize that within doing a display for a gift wholesaler and vice versa. I mean, it's interesting that how they both work hand in hand, and it's a good
Yep,
education.
no doubt about it. I agree 100%.
Okay, I want to talk because we talked a little bit about Gap. I have to talk about Gap. I love Gap, and I've said this in the past, like Gap kind of lost their way. It was
Yep.
everything we wore, everything we did. They had the most amazing campaigns, like every celebrity in the city, like, and then they kind of lost their way. And now I'm happy to say it seems from afar that they are scraping their way out. I believe Marc Jacobs is now heading up some of the design. So it's not like this, when they bring in designers, I think a lot of times they make it so designer-ish that it literally repels the people who love Gap or love that brand, and suddenly
Yep.
they don't understand it, and it becomes like, I'm not going to buy it. And it has nothing to do because the designer's amazing or not. It's just the general public who love
Yep.
a shirt that says Gap don't get it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I had the good fortune to be at Gap during its heyday in the mid '90s, and one of the best stories I remember is we had a little black short sleeve women's mock T-shirt that it was a basic. It sold. We had it in black and white, and we sold quite a few of them. But Sharon Stone, the actress, wore it on the red carpet, and
No problem.
when she was asked who she was wearing, she said Gap, and that little black mock neck T-shirt became the hottest thing in the world. And we could not keep it in stock, and we sold gazillions of those things. And actually, the buyer or the merchandisers renamed the tee. Instead of short sleeve black mock tee, it became known as the Sharon Stone tee in the system and everything else. And to your point, it was an indication that it wasn't about being overly designed or overly fashionable. It was an item that was part of everybody's wardrobe, and it was about being a brand that everybody recognized. And I agree with you that I think Gap got a little, maybe the merchants got a little bored, and they wanted to be a little bit more fashion forward, and it just strayed from who the core customer was. And I am thrilled to see that the company seems to be returning to kind of its roots, and the products that made it so successful.
And you had said also part one, some of the things that had the hand in on some of Gap's like dropping sales was Old Navy became so important. And it still seems, I mean, everyone kind of forgets that all these are under one umbrella and one
Yep.
brand under the umbrella. If it starts doing better, all of a sudden everybody's paying attention to that. And all the efforts, it seems like, go into designing that. And something gets left, even those two design teams, but
Yeah.
something there's a disconnect all of a sudden. Is how, because I
Yeah.
remember when Old Navy came out, it was like, they're basics. And then all of a sudden they were doing super cute fashion stuff. And it was like, I found myself even saying, like, wow, this is actually better than Gap. Like, this is,
Yep.
and I'm guessing a lot of other people had that same realization.
Yeah, I think you're right on. I think there's no doubt that there was some overlap in the product and who it was appealing to. And Old Navy, as Old Navy became more successful, it certainly peeled off some of the Gap customers. And I don't I think there probably was a change in focus within the company as well. I mean, a lot of the good Gap managers ended up going to the Old Navy division, so there was some sharing of talent that maybe had a negative impact on the Gap brand as well. I think all those things together certainly contributed to some of the decline in the success of the Gap brand. And I think it's there's a better line of separation now. I think that Gap and Old Navy have done a better job of kind of creating their own identities, and so I think there's a better there's a better sense of who Old Navy's selling to and who Gap is selling to.
I think that for anybody that has a second store, decides they're going to open a second store and they want it to feel different, I think that is a challenge. And I think that if you're going to do it, it needs to be really different. Because I know a lot of people open a second store and they want it to feel completely different. And often it ends up looking very close to what the original store was.
Yeah, no, you're right. You can make the same. You could go the other way with the Gap brand and compare it to its other sister brand, Banana Republic. And I thought that there was always enough separation between Banana Republic and Gap, both in design and in price points, that it was two different customers. Maybe a little bit of overlap, but to your point, there was always a good job of keeping separate identities between those two, and maybe not so much in the early days of Old Navy.
Well, now that I think, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I remember thinking, if I remember reading right, it was that Old Navy was supposed to be the inexpensive Gap. So a lot of their styles were, it also kind of went to their sizing was different. It was also bigger than Gap. So I think
Yep.
it fit more middle America. And now
Yep.
that just now I started thinking about that, it's like they had a lot of the same exact styles on both lines. One was a better cotton, the other was a better fit. But now that I think about it, it really was like it was the inexpensive Gap.
No doubt. If you want a pair of plain khaki pants, do you go to Old Navy and spend $28, or do you go to Gap and spend $38? I mean, it was basically the same style.
So all this time that you have spent in management and managing thousands of people across multi channels, you have written a book, and I've scanned through it, and it's like I still want to ask you questions about like managing like tons of people, because I think one thing I consistently hear from retailers is, one is, and I don't hear as much as I did after like the years after COVID, but trying to keep talent and trying to keep top salespeople. But one of the things, and it makes me insane about a lot of stores that I've worked with that have managers but don't, as far as when it comes to sales and goals. And I just got off a phone call with my retailer, Lucy's, and every week we go over the numbers. And I'm super crazy when it comes to my numbers, that I look at them obsessively. And I'm always, to me, I need to beat last year, last week. But
Yep.
I think a lot of retailers don't clue their managers in completely they don't for some reason want to share numbers with them. Like one of my old accounts was like, I'm not going to share our numbers with them. They're going to think literally the answer was they're going to know how much money we're making, and they're going to want more money. And like, you realize that you can't give them goals. Like you can make up goals, but you need to give, like, I always believe in, like, this is the goal for the week. This is and then each day you got a daily goal and broke it
Yep.
down by the hour. So your team knew, like, so talk to us a little bit about when you are having management, you're training management, and you are trying to raise your dollars in your store and try to get everyone on board with the same. Give everyone a little bit of insight of why you need to share.
So it's an excellent point and an excellent question. I love the analogy of a GPS, right? I mean, we all know how to use a GPS to get somewhere where we don't know how to get there. The first step of using a GPS is you have to enter the destination. And if you enter the destination wrong, or you enter the destination imprecisely, you're not going to get to your goal. Not going to get to the spot that you want to get to. I believe very strongly the same thing holds true in business, particularly in a retail business. If you don't let people know exactly and precisely what the objectives are, and what their personal objectives are, or what the team objectives are, there's no way in the world they're going to be able to navigate the step-by-step directions to get there. But it's more than that as well. Retail is a very dynamic environment, and it requires energy. If you have people who are sleepwalking through the day, who aren't really engaged and aren't really involved in achieving anything, then it's unlikely that they're going to be able to overcome all of the obstacles that come up during the day, or at least not with any sort of energy. So you want people on the team who are motivated by that competitive spirit. And there's a lot of people out there who do enjoy being part of a successful team, and who want to strive for some tangible goals. And I think the idea of keeping goals confidential, or keeping financials confidential, is just so short-sighted, because it undermines the entire the entire goal, the entire objective of having a team of engaged people who are all working towards the same end, and who share a team goal. I mean, it's I my introduction to retail was, as I said, Macy's, and Macy's at the time, it was in the days before computers, and I can remember on big Macy's one day sale, my first Macy's one day sale, every department manager had to run back to the manager's office every hour on the hour and write in a book what the sales results were for the last hour,
I remember
and
those.
and that was the most invigorating process because it brought all the managers into the manager's office at the same time, and everybody was sharing their stories, and everybody was, on the one hand competing to be better than the other departments, but on the other hand, everybody was also contributing their total to the big picture of the store's performance. And so you felt like you were competing, but you felt like you were all part of the same team working towards the same goal, and that energy was just absolutely unable to be replicated by any other process. And to the degree that owners or managers restrict information about sales goals or financial performance, I think it's really, not only does it undermine their ability, the team's ability to get where you want them to get, it just ruins the spirit.
Because in Anthro, every week we get a box, and it was literally reports, and it was across the board. And, my store was Thirsty Promenade, and we were expected to keep up the same numbers at that time with Third Rock because that was the store we both were in competitive. And we would go through all the numbers as a company. And, it was exhilarating and it was frightening because you can't overhit every single goal and every single number.
Sure.
And when you
Sure.
did it, you were like not called out, but you certainly in the whole entire company, you did, which made you either hungrier or shut down. And I
Yep.
watched people go through both. And for me, it made me hunger. But what it did do is when you talked about the numbers collectively as a company, it just got everybody super excited. But I also know in the same breath that I can hear already people saying, but the if we start sharing numbers and we start talking about goals, aren't the employees going to start asking for a commission because they're seeing the numbers that they're driving instead of thinking about it as collectively as we're all one team and this is our goal and like let's get to this number collectively as a group and be excited and share about it. But I think that people it's a fair assessment that some employees will say, I look at how much I sold. Do we get, or if we're selling more, do we get commission now, or do we get bonuses, or what is kind of, because I know
Yeah.
some big companies do run on a structure for bonuses.
Yeah, I guess I'll attack that point from two angles. First, there are downsides to commission as well, and I think a retailer needs to be able to satisfactorily explain their strategy. In other words, commission may create unhealthy competition among sales associates, or it may create sales behaviors that are inconsistent with the company's service goals, for instance. So you don't want salespeople pushing products just to get a short-term sale, that somehow destroys the long-term relationship with the customer, as an example. So I think a retailer needs to be able to explain more about what its long-term strategy is and its bigger picture strategy to satisfy some of those questions. So I think it's okay to say we don't believe in a commission structure for reasons X, Y, and Z. But then the second part of my answer is that retailers, any company, still needs to find a way to satisfy people's desire for recognition for doing a good job. So that recognition doesn't have to be in the form of a commission. It can be in the form of team rewards or public acknowledgement or private acknowledgement, or I think we all like to feel successful, and we all want to be recognized when we are successful. And the best managers are the ones that know how to make people feel great without it costing the company an arm and a leg.
Yeah, there's so many I mean, one thing about management, I mean, I was a manager for years, and I I loved it and I hated it, but I think I loved the development of employees so much and getting them excited about sales goal. Because Thursday Promenade, I was also at Z Gallery for a nanosecond before I jumped to visual merchandising for them. And
Mhm.
it was, I mean, this is in the mid 90s, and we were at a $3 million store then, and trying to keep, it was like herding cats, trying to keep everybody with, trying to selling and everyone's, but I'd like to do big collective goals, like, hey, if we reach this number, especially if it was something that was going to push us over for the number for the month, I would do contest within the team for the week or the month or whatnot, but it would be for the whole team. It was like, if we make
Yep.
this number, I'm going to buy everybody breakfast for the week, or we're going to do pizza, or there will be a bonus for everyone that will split. Because that way, at least everyone felt like they were, I mean, it's your job. I mean, you're
Yep.
selling, this is
Yep.
what you do, but it did make everyone feel like everyone had a common goal that they were ultimately going to get something. It kind of kept everybody else like pushing the other slower ones, or the ones that
Yeah.
was engaged, kept them, but it did also create some sharks.
I do love that strategy because ultimately, the retailer's success is about everybody, the whole team. It's not about individuals. And sure, there's going to be some individuals who sell a little bit more, but there's also going to be some individuals who are faster at processing people through the cash register, or who are more effective at getting product to the sales floor, or representing it in a compelling way. And all of those things are important, and it takes every piece of it to achieve the team goals.
When you decided to write this book, how long was this process? Because it's 700 something pages, and it's a book on management, and it's everything from the new inexperienced manager to experienced manager who achieved success by needing more structure, to senior leaders for big operations. That's a lot to encompass. So how did you kind of decide, and when did you decide to do this?
Yeah. It's actually my fifth book. So I started my first one was I don't know, 15-ish years ago. So I decided to start going that route quite a while ago. The answer is that, from the time I decided to write this one to the time it actually hit Amazon was almost about 2 years. But the real answer is that it's taken me my entire career to write that book, because much of the stuff that I share in there, I share stories from my early days at Gap, or even from my days at Herman's Sporting Goods before I arrived at Gap, and much of the lessons that I've learned, and the stuff that I share, is stuff that I've had the benefit of experiencing and developing and building over the course of decades. So it's I've been refining this stuff, over and over again, and I continue to refine it as I do my job today.
And this is hands-on. It's not, because there's a lot of people I've realized that write books for management and whatnot that actually haven't spent time in the trenches, and it's kind of it's a view from afar of managing. And I've always believed, if you are managing, my belief is you should have had a chance to do every job that you are managing people from. So I've done stock, I've been a
Hmm.
PM, I've been a third key, I've been an assistant manager. I mean, I've kind of, but for me, being a manager was important to me to understand every aspect that I was asking them to do, as
Right.
well as, God forbid, they left, that I knew how to do it.
For sure. And every single thing that is in my book is something that I have done personally, and I have put in place with others on my teams at multiple companies. So it's all very practical, and very field tested.
I have a couple questions on the book, but first, I would love to hear your description of a strong manager. How-
Sure. Sure. I think the strongest managers start with just being good, respectable people. That's kind of step one. It's one thing um, to be authorized as a manager. It's another thing to be really respected as a leader and to be effective. To be effective, I think people have to, I won't necessarily go so far as to say like you, but they certainly have to respect you, and they certainly have to believe that you respect them. And so the best managers start with that, just generally being a good listener, a pleasant, nice person to talk to, and polite, and eager to be of service. The second characteristic of a great manager, I think, is somebody who really knows how to manage action items. So management is about getting a team to deliver on specific behaviors and specific actions. And it's easy for teams to get distracted. It's easy for people to get off track. And managers who can keep themselves and their teams focused on the right behaviors and on the right actions are the ones who keep the train going in the right direction. Then third, a great manager is a manager who actually spends quality time following up. There is, it's one thing to assign tasks or to tell people what to do, or it's another thing to be there to kind of know what actually happened, and and then finally, the last piece of it, I think, is the great managers provide effective feedback. So there's no point in following up if you're not going to give feedback, and feedback can be in the form of positive reinforcement. Hopefully, everything works, and you can encourage people, and it goes back to that recognition piece that we talked about a few minutes ago. But another important piece of feedback is to redirect. Inevitably, things go wrong. There's misunderstandings, and the manager's got to follow frequently enough to be there to make sure that she or he is giving the redirection and getting people back on track before they get so far off that it's impossible to recover.
Like what would be a good example of that? Because I'm going to go back and ask the follow-up thing. There's one thing I need to bring up, but what would be a
Sure.
good what you just said right now, like the redirect?
So I'll tell a story from my past that when I learned this lesson in a very hard way.
Lesson. I like that.
I was managing a sporting goods store, and I had the guy who was running the golf department had to set up an end cap with golf ball displays, and I gave him what I thought was very specific direction. I told him to put the Titleist ball on the first shelf, the top flight ball on the second shelf, and the pinnacle ball on the third shelf. And I went so far as to say, Sid, give me, tell me what I just said. I want to make sure you understand it. And he said, of course, John, you told me Titleist on the first shelf, top flight on the second shelf, and pinnacle on the third shelf. And I'm like, okay. I walk away thinking there is no chance in the world this is going to go wrong. I come back a couple of hours later, and he's redone the end cap, and the Titleist is on the bottom, the top flight's in the middle, and the pinnacle's on the top. And I'm like, how, Sid, did you get this wrong? And he said, John, I didn't get it wrong. You told me Titleist on the first shelf from the bottom, right? I'm like, ah. And to me, that was the lesson that said, if I had been there early enough, then I would have been able to provide the feedback. I would have seen him putting the Titleist ball, the very first box, on the bottom shelf, and I would have been able to redirect him. And that redirection would have been a simple, my fault, Sid. I gave, clearly there was a misunderstanding. I did not mean the first shelf from the bottom. I meant the first shelf from the top. And I would have saved Sid hours of work and myself hours of aggravation.
There's one thing that I will say that I think a lot of people forget when they give direction, especially for merchandising or
Mhm.
display, is that they, you know what you don't know what you don't know. And
Mm.
I I just assume when I'm giving direction, you've done this. We were talking about merchandising, and
Yep.
I've given direction. Like one of the times I was in setting up Atlanta at a gift showroom for Peking Handicraft, and they
Hmm.
always sent Peter, he was customer service, that we always sent him. And I remember saying, can you do this, blah blah blah. Walked away, and I came back. I'm like, what are you doing? What happened? He's like, this is what you told me to do. I'm like, Peter, I would never. And he's like, I'm a customer service person, Michelle. I don't. I was like, I had to take a step back, and I'm like, you know what? I'm really sorry because I just assumed you. So that's one of
Yep.
them. The following up thing.
Yep.
I can't begin to tell you how many times I've watched stores where, we were trying to get daily tasks in for the team who's standing behind the counter all the time. And
Right.
I'm walking through the store and I've become, as the merchandiser, the cleaner. And it's like I'm the merchandiser. I'm not here to do your once a month cleaning. It's
Right.
like this is something that has to be every single day. So we would set up a checklist.
Right.
Yes, and inevitably, there's always the employee takes the checkbook, boom, 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 comes back. Okay, I'm done. What next? And it's like, really finished all that? And yeah, yeah. So the managers of the store were never going back and checking. I'm like, I really need to go back and check. And I would go back through, and literally none of it was done. They would just kind of go through and do like the minimal just to
Yep.
check it off, just so they could say, I'm done. I don't have to do this anymore. And
Yep.
I was constantly like, you guys need to at least sweep by and check that this is being done. So when they hand you that list and it's like done in 30 minutes for a 5,000 square foot store, that you're
Yep.
like, hey, let's go look at it, or let's go talk about this. Like, and it when it didn't happen. It's like, so tell me a little bit about what happened here, because
Yep.
I'm running my hands across it and there's dust. And those are teaching moments to me that I think a lot of people just would rather pass off, and it's done. They said it's done, but that is the to me, the follow-up part of it is huge.
Oh my goodness, it is management is all about follow up. And I have a line I like to use. I like to say, show me, don't tell me. If somebody tells me the job's done, it's not that I don't believe them that they think the job's done. I mean, most people don't lie, but we may have different opinions on what done really looks like. And so the only way that you can close that gap, the only way that you can be absolutely sure is to do a personal inspection. And so show me, don't tell me. I once in my Bank of America days, we had a process by which communication from headquarters came in on email, and we printed it out, and we had a little binder, and everybody had to go read the binder before
Oh, the
they
store communication binder.
or communication binder, exactly. And so everybody was to read it and initial it, and then that was their indication that they had read it, and they were all up to speed on the new information. Well, I had one branch where the staff was consistently not aware of new products or new procedures or whatever, and I was going through their communication binder, and everybody was signing the binder. All the things were posted. So one day I watched somebody walk in. They punched in, reported to the binder. They read the binder. They signed it, and they walked away. And before they took 3 steps away, I went up and said, "So tell me what you just read in the binder." And they couldn't tell me a word. And to your point, they were just going through the process of signing it, and the manager was not doing anything from a personal interaction standpoint to reinforce the message. And so we had to. It became about not reading the document and signing it. It was about actually having live eyeball to eyeball conversation to ensure that the information was getting across. And so I mean, I have 1,000 stories like that. I think your point is 100% right on.
Well, I think it's just human nature. I mean, I think sometimes like the people signing off on the to-do list would rather do something quote fun. And
Sure.
to them, the cleaning was not fun. And it's part of running the store. And I finally had to tell the owner, because it was like, these are thousands of dollars worth of like giant crystals. I'm like, will you please look at the dust on this and please tell me that you are going to take your customer over and talk about everything that this does, and then look at it and it's completely covered in dust.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
it's lowering the standard, or it's lowering the value of what you're selling. It's like going into Macy's and the pant table is a giant mound of clothing. And it's like, by not folding it and not following up to see that the table's been touched and folded, you literally have just like downgraded those items. Like it's now Costco. It's now just the Costco bin of khakis, and
Yep.
through the piles and find your size and chuck the rest back on there.
For sure. For sure.
One of the things in your book that I read, that you touched on it before, was being a great manager, be a respected person. And I had a boss years ago at Fred Siegel, Michael Campbell, and I was the person that was like, I want to be a manager. I want to be a manager. I want to be a manager. And he's like, you're on that path. He's like, I'm just going to tell you right now, I'll give you the management title when you learn to manage people without them knowing they're being managed.
Mm.
And I think that that's kind of what that says, is leading people without them knowing they're being led.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great point. I once attended a seminar. This was early in my management career, and I was in my early mid 20s, and I thought I knew it all. I thought I was a hot shot, and I guess I was doing okay. But the moderator of the at the conference said the best leaders are the ones who know how to unlock answers in other people's heads rather than having all the answers themselves.
Ooh.
That stuck with me a long time, and it did change my perspective on on how I was viewed, because I went back into my environment and I thought about the people I was working for, and those managers who barked out orders and seemed to know, seemed to tell everybody what to do, as opposed to the managers who kind of collaboratively had conversations and kind of allowed me to make some decisions on my own, and allowed me to some freedom, as long as I was working within the right guardrails. Who did I really work harder for? And it changed my perspective. So yeah, I think you hit on a really important point.
The other thing that I think a lot, because I'm touching on things that I saw in your book that I like, you reading through this book, you are going to notice the things that all retailers deal with. And one which I think is very frustrating and can easily take down, and I've watched it take down entire teams of stores, is the bad apple effect.
Mm. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I, I really, I preach the belief that most people want to be good. It's very rare that somebody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to sabotage my company's success today. Uh, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody has the same attitude and everybody has the same motivation. And we as managers have a very serious responsibility to make sure that people are contributing, everybody's contributing to the common good. And bad apples, there's a bunch of different kinds of bad apples. There's some who are just kind of naysayers and bring the kind of the mood down for the team. There's some who kind of just create obstacles for the team. But bottom line, it's the manager's responsibility to kind of know who those bad apples are, and to help identify what's at the root of their issue, and resolve that. If you can't resolve that, you've got to get those bad apples off the team. I mean, it's not the most fun part of the job, but you can't let one bad apple kind of spoil the bunch.
Bob from Whizbang had said, because when the tariff thing first started rolling through at the beginning or last year, and everyone, between your cost of goods going up and the additional cost of tariffs, and I'd said, like, what can you do to control the situation on your own? He's like, you can't, the only thing you can really control is your employees as far as their output. Like you've got employees that do everything and they're on it and they will sell no matter what. Like they ask the right questions, they're with the customers, and then you have the employees who are just barely kind of making it. That's where you can save yourself the money, is like cut
Yeah.
those people and
Yeah.
really focus on bringing in people at the other. And what I've seen with the bad apple effect is literally cancer. And
Mm.
a lot of times is when you see it really badly is where it is a store that's had the same team for a long time, and the
Hmm.
new manager brought in, or a new owner, and they are changing things because it's time to change. And the old team, she's brought in some new people. The old team's still there, and the old team is pissed off. I can't believe this. This is change, blah, blah, blah. And the new team's like all excited and super happy and like, I can't wait, because they don't know the old way. But man,
Right.
the old way people like get into their ear and and it becomes like my old boss used to call it a pity party. And he used to say, don't get in the pity party, get away from it. It is not going to do you any good, because honestly, it is literally just that. It is a pity party. But those pity parties, man, I mean, I watched it happen at Z Gallery. I'd have amazing new employees and they're so excited and they're so green. And they spent 2 goddamn days with these people. And it was like, next thing you know, is they're chumming
Yep.
with them and they're equally as bitter. And it's like, what just happened? And that
Yep.
is
Yep.
the bad apple effect.
Yep. Yep. So true. So true.
The other thing I love is your tudometer.
Tudometer. Yeah, the tudometer is a fun little tool. I I think attitude is a hard thing to address with employees because it's very personal. As a manager, if you say to an employee, I think you've got a bad attitude. What's the natural response is, I don't have a bad attitude. You just breed defensiveness. But the reality is sometimes people do have a bad attitude, and as a manager, you've got to be able to address it. So I created the Tudometer, which is, it looks like a speedometer on a car, and it's numbered from 0 to 10, and a zero on the Tudometer is when somebody says, I'm going to do everything I can to not do my job and break everything, and a 10 on the Tudometer is, I'm going to do everything I can to achieve my goals and nothing's going to stop me. And every number in between is kind of, building up on that scale. And the magic of the Tudometer is, when it's popularized with the staff, manager can have a conversation with an employee and can point to the Tudometer, not literally but figuratively, point to the Tudometer and say, it looks like you might be a little low on the Tudometer today. And it makes it an objective conversation, even a little bit of a comical conversation.
Yeah.
And it almost excuses the employee, and it more than anything opens up the door to a conversation. So if you say to an employee, looks like you might be a little bit low on the Tudometer right now, did something happen that caused you to drop on the Tudometer? The employee can say, it's then not about a personal attitude. It's more about, yeah, something did happen. I just had really bad interaction with a customer. A customer yelled at me, and I'm really pissed off. And so the manager can then say, okay, let's talk that through, and can help the employee get past that moment, and the whole point of it can be, let's get you back up on the, higher on the Tudometer where you typically are. And so it's a silly little tool, but it's a way to objectify attitude and make it an objective conversation rather than a personal defensive conversation.
I love it because it takes it away from like, what is your problem today, where it's like kind of comical. It's like,
Yep.
your tudometer is reading rather low. Like what? I love
Yep.
that. And I think everybody can definitely understand that tudometer and seeing because it's a crazy phenomenon that you'll come in and you can read the energy. It's that phrase, read the room, and you never, I think good managers, what I love about really good managers, and again, this whole conversation is I think about because a lot of people have said, I don't understand like how people are doing so well in this store and that store. And, they're not really looking to how their manager is managing their business. And
Right.
good managers, I feel like, kind of put an arm around your employee and like give you an attaboy or give you a correctional. And it's like, you're there to guide and to support and give them all the tools they need to succeed. And I think that a lot of people don't realize a good manager, that's what they do. They're just there to quote manage and open the
Yeah.
door and do the report. And it's really employee development to me is what good management is.
So right on. Too many managers have this fear of being labeled as a micromanager, and they tend to leave people on their own. It's often the case that managers feel like they're top performers and want to be left on their own to do their own thing. Um, the reality is that nobody likes to be ignored. Top performers like to know that their top work is being recognized, and on top of that, the top performers are generally the ones who can actually grow the farthest. And to the point you made earlier, Michelle, those people are the people who can actually grow into positions of greater and greater responsibility. And you're foolish if you leave them alone and don't help them continue to build their skills and continue to feel great and increase their level of engagement in the work that they're doing.
And I think even with the lower performing employees, that if you put that attention on them, because I think a lot of times I've had employees that just feel like they're not as important because they're not the they're producing employees, and they start to have a little bit of intimidation with, and it's
Mhm.
like I feel like those team members also need that attaboy and that extra coaching and just extra, just, hey, how you doing today? And a little bit of extra attention, because I think it's easy as the lower level employees to get outshadowed by the ones who are like, the ta-da, like.
No doubt about it. There's another tool in the book called the leadership balance model, and it kind of addresses what I think is a faulty idea that management style is a continuum, a two-directional continuum. A lot of people think you can be an easy manager, you can be a difficult manager, and managers sometimes slide on that scale. Sometimes they'll be tougher, and sometimes they'll be easier, and people tend to be more in one camp or the other. I don't think of it that way. I think that as managers, we can help people perform at their best when we are doing two things at the same time. We're helping people feel super confident about their abilities, and we're helping them feel super challenged by continuing to grow and progress. Um, if people are feeling too confident, then they get complacent. If people are feeling too challenged, then they get overwhelmed and start to shut down. So I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. I think we need to do both. Help people feel great about what they're doing, and then help them feel excited about doing even better next time.
um One of the other things you had mentioned, and you'd said it earlier, is a safe space, of building a culture of organizational safety, of giving,
Yeah.
because this is the thing. If you put up expectations and you don't give your employees enough room for making a mistake, you petrify them into the point of almost, I'm afraid to do anything. So talk a little about that.
Yeah. And yeah, people become immobilized when they're afraid to make a mistake. They're afraid to take any action. Then they default to taking no action, and they wait for direction, and they wait for very specific direction. In addition, I think the safe culture has to make it okay for people to ask questions. People, even a little eye roll, or a little "I don't have time for a question right now" from a manager makes it unsafe, and makes the employee feel like they're being a bother to the manager if they ask questions, and that's certainly counterproductive. And it also has to be safe for employees to disagree. Sometimes, look, I mean, the reality is, as a manager, I never knew everything. I never had every answer, and sometimes the people who are most on the front lines have great ideas and know a little bit more about what the customers are saying, or about what's selling, or any other detail. And and if employees are feeling safe to offer their input and advice, then that just makes me better as a manager, because it opens my awareness to all of the collective thoughts and brain energy of everybody on the team. So I think the idea of it being a safe environment involves a bunch of different aspects.
Well, I think it also, I mean, it requires owners, managers to be open-minded and I mean, that building that culture, you have to be open-minded, but certainly for an employee to feel safe enough to be, hey, I just want to suggest this without being shot down, or without, the eye roll, or I don't have time, or we can talk about this later. And it's like, I there's so many things your employees can bring to the table, and like, no, all of them aren't going to be, you're not going to use all of them, but certainly that's going to only make them feel better. Also, it's going to get them feeling like they are part of this team, and want to be part of the successes, because they feel like they've had a hand in it.
So true. Absolutely.
So I'm going to, because we're going into an hour, but I do want to ask you one thing, because I have this a lot of the times with stores where they'll say, I just don't understand. We get merchandise in, and they put it out, and I don't understand how they would think that this goes in this section. And you're looking at, it's like, I mean, I wouldn't even know where to put that. But my response to that is always communication is, as a buyer coming back from a show, is if you have things that need to go in a certain place, is gather all this information and communicate this to your team or whoever is, because communication to me is one thing a lot of store owners are not doing enough, like both
Yeah.
talking about your sales and your numbers and your goals, as well as communication of like, this is what spring's going to look like. This is this new concept. So that, because Anthro, that's the one thing they were so good about, is like when they rolled out the new concepts, they were it was, I mean, I don't expect anyone to do this, but they would do, boards of, this is who lives in this room. This is what
Mhm.
her life feels like. These are the SKUs that are going in this concept, and this is what we would like it to look like, more or less. But a lot of, I think, owners think it's like going to take too much time. I don't have time to do that. But what it does do is it ensure that when these products do come in, it does ensure that at least they at least kind of end up in the area that you want them to be, or where, again, like your employee understands, like, oh my gosh, okay, this has got to be part of this, and they feel, again, more involved and have a hand in it.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I kind of view the retail organization as a chain, right? There's different links in the chain, and the link that is closest to the customer is the frontline salespeople. And if to the extent that communication is tight, from ownership or buyers or whatever, through the chain to that final link, it's a really solid chain, and the customers end up receiving the real message, the message that the owners or buyers intended to deliver. But if the links are weak, and those links get weak because of weak communication, if the information doesn't get passed down, then the link at the end of the chain is ill prepared to communicate the vision to the customers, and ill prepared to, even if it doesn't require a lot of communication to the customers, they're ill prepared to kind of fulfill the initial vision of the owners or buyers. And so, communication is to me the tool that keeps every link of the chain totally solid all the way through.
So you had mentioned, and this is where it's like, how do people communicate this? Because back in the day, we had the communication log, and I still love that stupid thing. But, now there's Slack, there's morning meetings. Like, what would you suggest to people, an easy way to communicate big changes or big things all the way down to little things?
I'm a huge fan of using multiple forms of communication for any message that's important. Uh, some people, uh, some people consume information better when they're listening to it. Some people consume it better when they're reading it. Some people consume it better visually. And I think the more you can coordinate messages and deliver them in multiple ways, the better off you are. In every case, I believe that if you truly have an important message that you need to deliver, in some fashion, there's got to be live conversation. There's technology can help. The old communication binders can help, but my goodness, we're human beings, and human beings like to communicate with each other, and we truly absorb information best when we've got some eyeball to eyeball conversation, and we're able to see people's body language and facial expressions and everything else. That's when the full message comes across.
So I would my thought would be like, morning meetings before the store opens with, even if it's just two of you, it's like, hey, come in 15 minutes before, let's talk about the goals, let's talk about what we're going to do today, blah blah blah. But what about for bigger stores? Do you suggest like the monthly store meetings? Or because I think I don't hear a lot of people doing store meetings anymore, and for the ones that I do hear, I love that they'll bring in pizza, or they'll
Yep.
bring breakfast, and they go over everything, if it's whatever big things. But I think that it's, do you suggest that to get everyone on one page? Or
Definitely, and I know I do for absolutely for sure. I know one of the big challenges with that is trying to find the time, right? When do you get everybody together in one place? And I think the solution to that might be to there's nothing wrong with holding multiple versions of the same meeting. So if you're going to have a monthly meeting with all staff, it can be a monthly meeting in three parts where you have it a morning version, you have an evening version, you have a weekend version, or whatever works to try and get everybody to be able to attend at least one of those live sessions. But I do think that that's really important, and I think it kind of connects the dots through so much of what we've talked about in this hour, that whether it's the numbers or the plans or the buyer's vision of new product that's coming in, or whatever, it's really important to make that connection.
we are on our last things, and I wanted to have you tell everyone where they can find your book, AIM, and tell everyone a little bit about any final words of encouragement or advice.
Sure. First of all, AIM, the full title is AIM, How Managers Get Radically Reliable Results. It's available in multiple printed versions, Kindle version, and Audible on Amazon. So easy to find there. You can also go to my website, which is jondario.com, and you can get it through there. As far as last words of advice, look, retail is a super fun industry to work in, and after almost 40 years, I have not gotten tired of it yet. I'm still excited to get up to go to work every day. But I think we all have to remember that it does require a tremendous amount of energy and a tremendous amount of collaboration, and management is an important piece of the entire success of an organization, and getting everybody on the team to understand what the bigger picture is, and being able to execute on the day-to-day somewhat boring things is really how it all comes together.
Oh, God, I love this conversation. We're going to give away 4 copies of your book. So we will announce how the contest is going to work. But I have the ebook, but I am getting the actual paper book, which I can't wait for, because management is something that I've loved my entire career in retail. And it's one thing that when you have a really good manager and you know how to lead your team, it makes the world of difference in how your store runs, as well as the profitability of your store. So I hope that everyone loved this conversation as much as I do. Tell everyone where they can find you on your socials.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on YouTube. Just find Jon Dario again, Jon, no H in the John. You'll find me quickly.
TikTok, no?
I'm not on TikTok.
John.
I'm an old guy. Give me a break.
Thank you again so much.